Okay, so hello everyone. So we're back at it again with another deck profile for Spellbook Dogmatika, and this is going to be for the new set that was just released, Cyberstorm Access. So I actually uploaded a deck profile on this last weekend, and this was after the 2 sneak peek events that I attended. So I just did a deck profile on the deck that I piloted at those 2 events. However, the uploaded video that I've put on my YouTube channel was pretty sloppy. I had a bunch of issues with it, notably the audio. There's a couple of moments where like my voice was spiking pretty hard. In addition to that, I was also testing around the deck this past week online and at locals as well, trying to improve the consistency. And yeah, there's a lot of obvious things that I probably should have included in the initial deck list that I didn't. So yeah, it's definitely a new deck. It feels a lot more solid than it was before, and it's also pretty interesting with the new choices. It's kind of like a different way of playing the deck now. So yeah, that's pretty much all the updates that I have for now. If you're curious about my results at the recent events, again, I've been taking this at regionals, YCSs. I also took it to the 2 sneak peek events that I went to, take it to locals, blah, blah, blah. If you're curious about all those results, it'll be listed in the description, so you can check that out if you want. But yeah, for now, I'll just get into the deck profile. So the card by card for the main deck. So yeah, I'll just start out with the Spellbook engine. Again, there's a bunch of different variants now that you can run, especially after the new set was released. I'll probably make a separate video going over those engines and like how they compare to this particular deck. But for now, we're still running the Spellbook engine. So yeah, we're still running the 3 Spellbook Magician of Prophecies, or the 3 Blue Boys. So he's your main normal summon. Not much has changed here. Searches out any Spellbook spell card that you may need at any given time. And he's good because his effect is mandatory, so he kind of just eats up any hand traps your opponent may have, because his effect is always going to proc to search. So as a prime target for Ash, Veiler, Imperm, Ghost Mourner, etc. So yeah, you don't have a choice in order to activate it. And that's really good because you want this card to be Ash as opposed to like Nadir Servant or your Ecclesia or your Dogmatikamatrix, anything like that. So it just protects your main combo lines with Dogmatika, which is nice. In addition to that, you're also playing the 3 Secrets, so nothing has really changed there as well. Just note that if you have both in your hand, so if you have Secrets and you have a Blue Boy in your hand, you typically always want to normal summon the Blue Boy first, because you have a chance of getting out your opponent's Ash with this card as opposed to the Secrets. So what I mean by that is, like, if you normal summon this and your opponent Ash is a Blue Boy, but you have a Secrets in hand, you can activate this without any fear of your opponent negating it. But if you do it in the reverse order, if your opponent negates your Secrets and you try to normal summon Blue Boy, the Blue Boy is still susceptible to stuff like Ash Blossom and Veiler. So it's always good to just do it in that order if you have both in hand. So yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. Nothing really changed there. So yeah, in addition to that, you're also playing the 3 Spellbook of Knowledge, running 3 copies. Again, I tested this at 2 again, and yeah, I came to the conclusion that yeah, you definitely need to run 3 copies. I wanted to take 1 copy out because I did see some consistency issues, but again, just note that your entire deck is essentially mono Spellcaster except for a couple of cards. And yeah, it just improves the consistency of the deck, because like even in the case where you hard draw 2 of your normal summonable monsters to like 2 Blue Boys, it's still good because you can just normal summon 1 to search out one of these knowledges, and then you'll use the knowledge in order to send the one in your hand to the graveyard to draw 2. So you're basically going card neutral at that point. So even in cases where you draw multiple normal summons, which would be just a complete brick in other engines, it's actually not that bad in this particular variant. So yeah, still running a 3 knowledge. Nothing really changed there. Moving on, you're running the 1 Fate. So there's a couple reasons why you're running it. This card just provides an insane amount of utility to the deck. Mainly because none of the effects here actually target, which is actually pretty crucial. So just note that it can get over stuff like Dragoons, also the new Albion Fusion, The new one that's basically a branded explosion. It can get over that, and obviously a bunch of other cards that I can't remember at the moment. But also the non-targeting Book of Moon effect is pretty relevant as well. Like, people are just playing the vanilla Book of Moon, so obviously one that doesn't target is pretty good as well. And the last effect, where you can just bounce a set spell or trap, is actually pretty good as well to close out games, because if your opponent just has like one set spell or trap that can interrupt you in order to like OTK your opponent, you can just bounce it and not have to worry about it. So yeah, I've been using that effect like more and more often now that I noticed. So yeah, you're just running one copy of that. And just a small note, again, you're only playing one because it is a hard brick. It requires graveyard setup, so you don't want to like brick your hands with multiple copies of this, especially considering it's searchable with like 6 cards in a deck. Yeah, the last Spellbook spell card you're running is the Spellbook of Judgment. So funny enough, I was actually debating on cutting this in my last list, but I decided to put it back in because it's actually pretty powerful, obviously. But just know that you're not playing Jowgen the Spiritualist in this deck. And the main reason for that is because like 50% of the time is probably like the best card ever. It's like the best blowout card. Your opponent can't do anything and they just kind of auto scoop. However, the other 50% is you like bricking with Jowgen. It's like stuck in your hand, like literally glued to all of your hands that you have. And it's just a hard brick. It causes you to lose because you don't have any follow-up or extensions, and it's just completely bad. So just to get rid of all that heartache, or not heartache, headache, I just decided just to cut it out of the deck. So yeah, just running the one judgment now. You may be thinking like, what's your actual payoff? Jumping ahead a little bit ahead now, but you can get into your Ecclesial judgment if you just activate 4. Same thing with Guiding Quem and Blazing Cartesia. So instead of trying to get into 3 spell cards a turn, and when you activate Judgment, you want to get into 4 in order to access these cards here. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit more of an investment, but again, the deck isn't really boiled down to like get Jowgen on board and bust. It's more just additional utility. And yeah, it can also be used defensively as well. Like if you're not confident that you'll be able to activate enough spells in order to get like a decent payoff off of this card, you can just set it, and then during your opponent's draw phase, you can just flip it during their turn. So they're kind of put in like a very awkward position where if they activate any spell cards, you're going to be plussing off of that during the end phase. So a really good card. Yeah, definitely run it. Again, you're not running Jowgen, but you have other spellcasters that you can summon off of the Judgment, obviously. And there's another card that will be going into during the side deck section, which is could be used with Judgment. So yeah, that's all for the Spellbook engine. Again, I'm not running Master because after doing a bunch of extensive tests, I realized that that card is just a hard brick, and you're not really worried about how many Spellbook spell cards you activate each turn anymore. So you don't really have to worry about like counting. Like if you're able to activate 4, then that's cool. If not, then also cool. So yeah, so moving on. You're running the Magician Souls package, so you're running 2 Magician Souls, you're running 1 Illusion of Chaos, and you're also running 1 Preparation of Rites. So for this engine, for the Preparation of Rites, it's just searching out the Illusion of Chaos. Just note that if you already went into your Albazoa that turn, you can just recur your Dogmatic Calamity back into your hand, because Preparation of Rites also adds a ritual spell from the graveyard back to your hand when you search. Just note that because you can just get a free card to dump off of the Magician Souls that you're eventually going to be getting into anyway. So just keep that in mind. But obviously it's just mainly just to search out the Illusion of Chaos. And the Illusion of Chaos is good because he's dark, and it's just an easy way of just dumping it off of Magician Souls effect into the graveyard for Fusion Summoning out Winda. And obviously the Magician Souls is here just to cycle through your deck, and it's also used as a normal summon, so it can be a replacement for a Blue Boy if you don't have access to it, or you can just use it to basically special summon itself in order to go into like Crowley or like Celine, anything you may need. And again, all these are dark, so they're fusion material for your Shaddoll Winda. Speaking of, you are playing the 1 Schism. After you go into your Winda, you can actually just send this to the graveyard because you're only playing 1 copy, and just get a +1 off of it. but you know, you can do that with any dead spells and traps that you may have, not just Schism, obviously. And yeah, this one is just mainly just to, you know, get into your Cheval plays. So yeah, that's pretty much all for this engine. I guess one other thing I would note before wrapping up is that you're not playing the Quintent Magician. So when you are going into your Zoa, this card here, typically you're going to be sending your Despia monster, this one, the level 12, but note that this is a light monster, not dark like Quintent was, so you're going to need to rely more on this Magician Souls engine in order to like reliably get into Shaddoll Window. So just be cognizant of where you're sending off of this card and your Dogmatika plays, because you definitely need a dark monster in your graveyard in order to do something. So yeah, just be cognizant of that, because you could like have a Schism that doesn't really do anything. That came up a lot recently because I've just been used to having the Quintet in the graveyard. So yeah, just be cognizant of that. Moving on, you are playing, if I can find it, where did I put it? You're playing 3 copies of Ecclesia, so that's 2 right there, and the third one's here. Yeah, so you're playing 3 copies. Even in the case where you draw like multiple copies of this is still fine, because you can just normal summon 1, and when you normal summon, you can just link it away for Artemis, because it's level 4 lower spellcaster. And then the other one that you have in your hand, you can just special summon it because you have an extra monster on board. And from there, you would just be able to either activate the effect and like pop off from there, or you can just link climb further and not activate the effect then. So you have a couple of different choices, even if you draw multiple copies of the same card. So you definitely need to run 3 copies, because it also searches out the entire Dogmatika engine by itself. So that's pretty self-explanatory. In addition to that, you're also running the 3 Nadir Servant. Again, another self-explanatory card. Just note that Branded is also running this card, so I really don't want this card to get semi-limited by them abusing it with Guiding Quem. But we'll just have to see what happens. I don't think it's going to be in Konami's radar in terms of like semi-limiting it, honestly, but Konami's just releasing more and more cards that can be abused from the extra deck with this card, so yeah, I'll actually be going over some of the new ones in the extra section, but just keep an eye on that card, I guess, for now. But yeah, it's still definitely the best card in the deck, without a doubt. You're also playing 1 Maximus. So for this card, I used to run 2 copies of it, but I decided to cut it down to 1, because again, it was another card that was just bricking like very heavily. Like in most of my dead hands, Maximus was in it, so I decided just to cut it down to 2. Just be a little bit more cautious when you're using it, because you don't want it to get banished, obviously. So if you're playing against Kashtira or anything like that, just be a little bit more aware of what you're doing. Try to OTK them as opposed to like breaking their board and they can just banish it off of like Fenrir or Ricehard or whatever. But yeah, for the most part, if your opponent like pops it, like send it to the graveyard, that's fine, because that card can be like recurred with Nadir Servant. A lot of people forget that this card can target monsters in the deck, but also in the graveyard as well. So if it gets popped, you can just recycle it back into your hand. And yeah, obviously Maximus is pretty busted. You have a lot of targets in the extra deck, which I'll be going into later, in order to like kind of abuse the effect of this as much as possible. So yeah, you're running that. Moving on, you're running some interesting texts. You're running 1 Guiding Quem and 1 Blazing Cartesia. So I decided to run these because obviously I think they're really cool cards, and I want to incorporate some of the newer cards in the set into the deck to see like how they will perform. And like this entire week I decided to play around with them, and I've been really liking the results. So if you're kind of confused at like what these cards do, I'll just quickly go into the combo. So with Guiding Quem, typically you only want to go into her if you also have access to the Magician Souls engine. So if you have her and you have any of these cards here, you'll be able to kind of pop off. Just note that with the Magician Souls engine, you can also access it with Herald the Arclight that you have in the graveyard. So there's a couple ways of getting into this if you have Guiding Quem in your hand. But let's just say for now that you have just Guiding Quem and the Magician Souls. In this case, you just normal summon Guiding Quem, and from there, you would just send the Blazing Cartesia to the graveyard. Again, because she's going to be sending any card that has Follow the Outcast in its text. The only other option that you can send is Nadir Servant, but you would never do that. That doesn't make any sense. You just send the Blazing Cartesia in this case. And from there, you activate Magician's Soul's effect to special summon itself onto the board. And then you'll use Magician's Souls. Like, if you want to activate the effect, you can, but you just link it away for the Artemis. And Guiding Quem's effect has like specific wording. It says like if a card leaves the extra deck, so that means not just like sending it from the extra deck to the graveyard, but also by link summoning, fusion summoning, exceed summoning, synchros, all that. So since Artemis left the extra deck and now is on the field, you can activate Guiding Quem's effect to special summon out the Blazing Cartesia. So now you have these 3 monsters on board. From here you can just link these 2 into your Crowley. So you can get a Spellbook spell card search as chain link 1, and then you can chain block the Crowley with Blazing Cartesia. So from here you would just fuse these 2 for your Grangan, and then you'll get the the Spellbook spell card search off of the Crowley. Then in the next chain you'll be able to activate this in order to go into like either a Garura or a Titaniclad or an Aklon, anything that you may need. Also, you're also running this new card, which I'll get into later in the deck profile, but you have a lot of different options with just the Guiding Quem search, which is really nice. So yeah, you're just running 1 copy because, again, you need Magician's Souls in order to activate it, but you can search it out, and you can special summon it out during the end phase with another card that you're running, which is the Lilith, the new level 12 synchro that you're going to be using with Zoa as well, because at the end phase you can special summon a like Spellcaster that has the same attack and defense, which is going to be Guiding Quem. And so when she special summons, you just dump the Blazing Cartesia to the graveyard. And from there you have a choice. You most likely sent in a fusion monster to your graveyard at that point, so you can just recur this back into your hand, or you can just leave it and have like an additional interruption during your opponent's turn. Kind of just depends on what you want to do. So that's kind of like the main 2 combos that you have with these 2 cards. Another thing is that Blazing Cartesia kind of helps you brick. Like if you drew your Zoa or your Maximus or anything, you can just normal summon this and send both this and something from your hand to the graveyard in order to go into Grangan Oil that way. So it's just another good card just to help you unbrick for those level 12s and level 8 Dogmatika monsters that you're running. So yeah, I've been really liking these 2. This adds a lot of nuance and utility to the deck that I didn't have before, which I've been really liking. So yeah, you're running those. Moving on to the ritual package, you're just running 1 Dogmatika Zoa, 1 Dogmatikamatrix, and 1 Dogmatika Calamity. So you're still running just 1 copy of both of these cards. Again, you only need just the Zoa because the other 2 are a little bit redundant, because it kind of does what both of those do, like in the same card, because it just kind of nukes your opponent's extra deck in half. Because if they don't have, like if they have like the standard extra deck lineup, like 15 cards, you would just be able to nuke 7 from it initially. With Maximus, that's another 2, and with the Matrix, that's another 1, so that's 10 cards in total. Usually you'll be able to nuke from your opponent's extra deck in just 1 turn. So it's really good. You just need that copy. You don't really need the other ones because it's just kind of greedy and inconsistent. It's only good if you're going to be running the pure Dogmatika list, but obviously you're not doing that since you're running Spellbooks. It also makes all your other Dogmatika cards unaffected by extra deck monster effects, so your opponent can like pop them with Arise Heart or Mirror Jade or anything like that. Dogmatika Calamity kind of just makes it so that you're able to get this out consistently with the Luluwalith, or whatever her name is. You just send this to the graveyard in order to ritual summon out Zoa, and you get obviously the effect at the end phase. And the only other change that I made from my previous list on my channel is the Matrix. I was running 3 copies of this, but it's really not needed because you're only running 1 ritual, and you can only activate this once per turn. And again, this is kind of a going first build, so you're not going to really get the full advantage of this if you're going first, because you need a monster in your opponent's side of the board in order to get a double search, essentially. So yeah, that's all that you're running for the ritual package. It's very lightweight, and again, you can also search these out with Herald of the Arclight if you need it. Like if you need the other copy, you can go into it with Maximus in order to search out either of those. Just one punishment. I definitely need more interruptions. That's one of the initiatives I was doing in order to try to improve this deck from this past month or so. So I just added the Dogmatika punishment again, and I've been really liking it. Just kind of lacking that additional protection and interruption. Just getting like the double pop with Dissonantis. And kind of wrapping up the Dogmatika package, you're running one Iris Sword Soul and one Fleur de Lis because they're basically the same card lore-wise. But if you're not familiar with the Iris Sword Soul, basically she can special summon herself if there's a monster on board that has its effects negated. So one way of doing that is by negating an effect with Fleur de Lis, which she's basically like an effect veiler that's searchable in the archetype. So yeah, you can use both of them in conjunction with one another, but the main card you're going to be using is Impermanence, if you're just trying to like strictly special summon her with her own effect. So yeah, this is another good card because it's a really good hand trap. It's one of the best traps in the game still. And effect negation I think is going to be really powerful moving forward in this format, so I definitely like main decking the Impermanence still. But yeah, it's also another way of just getting out the Iris Sword Soul whenever you need it. And if you're not even familiar with what this card does, basically she gets an additional effect depending on where your opponent special summons monsters from. So if they special summon a monster from their hand, you get to special summon a monster from your hand. That's really good with the Fenrir package, which I'll get into in a bit. Also with like Blazing Cartesia and Guiding Quem, those are really good targets. In addition to that, if your opponent special summons a monster from the deck, you get to draw 2. So it's essentially a Pot of Greed. And if your opponent special summons a monster from the extra deck, you get just essentially just pop it immediately after they summon it, which is really nice for like additional interruption. So yeah, I've been really liking these. And obviously for Iris Sword Soul, you're going to be special summoning her out more consistently with the new Despia Lilith monster, because again, she is a light spellcaster that has the same attack and defense values. So at the end phase, you can just special summon her out, and now you have another body and another interruption for your opponent's turn. So really good card. I've been really liking it, and she's technically one of my favorite cards in the game. That's why I kind of blinged her out. So yeah, I'm really glad that she's actually kind of useful in this deck. It's reliable. There's like a reliable way of getting into her as opposed to before, so I kind of have to run her. So yeah, that's all for the Dogmatika engine. Moving on, I'll get into the small Fenrir package you're running. So you're just running 2 Fenrirs, and you're running the 1 Pressure Planet. So the Fenrir package is just like an additional interruption during your opponent's turn. Excellent starter because you can just special summon it out, and your opponent has to deal with the Fenrir along with all of your other Dogmatika crap that you're special summoning out. In addition to that, like when you special summon out, you just search out the other copy. So even if they clear your entire board, they're going to have to deal with another Fenrir during your next turn, which is a lot of pressure. Pun intended. But you're running the Pressure Planet because obviously it searches out the Cashier monsters, and it just synergizes well with obviously Spellbook Judgment because it's a spell. So, and yet also the passive attack and defense boost for each attribute that you control, or that's on the board in general, is really nice. Just like an additional effect that's really nice. It was really good with Jowgen because it boosted up this defense by like, let's say 300 attack. So it protected from most normal summonable monsters, but since you're not running the Jowgen, it doesn't really do that much. But yeah, it's still nice just to have the additional attack boost. I think it's a little bit more consistent as opposed to running 3 Fenrir. So yeah, I'm running that. You're running the 3 Drone Lockbirds. So this is going to be a blowout hand trap moving forward in this format because it really hurts Purely and Super Heavy Samurai along with Runic. Basically any deck, really. So you definitely need to run 3 copies in the main deck. Also, unlike other main decks, the Drone Lockbird can be normal summoned in order to go into Armorage or Artemis because it is a spellcaster. So it has dual uses. And to wrap up the main deck, you are running the 1 Called By. Obviously, for Drone Lockbird, Dimension Shifter, Ash, any of those hand traps. And you're also running the 2 Kaijus, the Gambacillus, so you're running the weakest one. I really like this card in the main deck, particularly because of the new synchro that you're running, which is going to be this card here, which is Golden Cloud Beast. It was also released in CYAC, and it's going to be in a lot of people's bulks. I already know a lot of people don't even know that this card exists. But what this card is essentially, if it's sent to the graveyard, you get to target a card that your opponent controls and add it to the hand. So you can just like kaiju your opponent's monster, then send this card to the graveyard with your Dogmatika engine, and then you can just reuse the kaijus right afterwards. So it's essentially a compulse. So you can just reuse the kaijus with this card as well. You can also get over like Mirror Jade and any of those annoying cards that are pretty hard to get over with this card as well. So yeah, in terms of just using Gambacillus, it's going to be really good against like these synchro spam decks like Gold Pride Punk or anything that can go into Baron de Fleur. And also the Purely deck, the main like Exceed Cat that they go into, you can just kaiju over it and don't have to worry about it. So I think it's a really good choice, this format in the main deck. Whew. So yeah, that's for the main deck. It's 42 cards. Again, you're running a lot of bricks. I won't go over all of them, but like Iris Sorcerer is technically a brick, even Fleur de Lis a brick. The Zoa and the Dogmatic Calamity, if you don't draw both of them or have a way to get into both of them, then they're bricks. So you're running a decent amount of bricks in the deck. Like Schism's a brick as well, Maximus is a brick. So you definitely want to run more than 40 cards in a deck like this in order just to make it a little bit more consistent. Alright, so yeah, moving on, I will go into the extra deck. So I've kind of been alluding to most of this throughout the entire deck profile, but you are running the one Artemis along with the Almirage and the Secure Gardener. So you definitely have like two routes that you have to go down, like depending on what you have in your hand and your mulligan. If you have access to knowledge, and you go into the Artemis in order to go +1. But if you don't have access to the Spellbook of Knowledge, then you just go into the Almirage and Secure Gardener, so that you have a Link monster on board and a Link monster in your graveyard for Maximus to banish. So you just need to have one copy of each. You run the Crowley because it's your only way of getting into your Spellbook engine if you didn't get any in your initial mulligan. It's also a Link 2. Spellcaster is also dark. It can be used for Fusion Material for Winda, so it's just all around a really good card. And the last Link monster that you're running is the Selene. So I decided to put this back in because it's just really good in order to just help you win in the late game, especially in like a more simplified game state. You definitely want to like recur your spellcaster that you got popped, like your Zoa or your Maximus, anything like that. And yeah, in late game you're definitely going to have like a ton of counters. And just note that her effect is quick effect, so you can special summon one from your graveyard during your turn, and then during their turn you can also do this exact same thing, special summon another one. So it just adds a lot of pressure and just basically helps you like rejuvenate a lot of your resources if your opponent's like getting rid of them throughout the game. So I've been really liking this, but I'm not running Accesscode Talker because I just don't have enough room for it, unfortunately. So that's that. Moving on to the synchros, again you're running the Herald of the Arclight against Earthchild Illusion of Chaos, along with Zoa and Calamity. You're running the Golden Cloud Beast, I just mentioned it. It's basically a compulse, really good with kaijus, but also just good against cards like Mirror Jade, because you can just bounce it back to the hand. Any of those annoying boss monsters, you can just bounce it. You can also just send it with Granganol because it is a level 6 light monster, so it works that way as well. Running one Cyclone Omega just enables a recursion of the deck, allows you to recycle some of your resources like Fate and some of your Dogmatikas that were popped. So you can do that with Maximus and Fleur de Lis in order to like close out games. You can also do it with Spellbook of Fate, so you can just shuffle it back into your deck and then search it out with Blue Boy or Secrets, anything that you may need. So yeah, those are really good synchro monsters that I've been running, and obviously the Lilith replaced Quintent Magician and enables you to play cards like, Blazing Cartesia, Quem, and the Iris Sorcerer. Another target is obviously the Dogmatika Ecclesia as well. So you have tons and tons of targets in this deck for this card. Yeah, that's for that. Moving on to the fusions. running one Entis, running one Gura, and you're running one, is all out of order, you're running one Titaniclad. So the Entis, again, I was running 2 copies of this before, but since you're running the new Synchro monster, you definitely have like enough interruptions in your extra deck now in order to get over anything that you may need. So technically it's kind of like running 2 Entis. So I decided just to cut this down to 1 in order to run some of the other stuff that I wanted to try out. Guru is obviously a free draw. It's also dark. Same thing with Titaniclads, it's dark. So these are prime targets for fusion material for Wunda. And Titaniclad obviously searches out the Fleur-de-Lis at the end phase. But if you haven't activated Ecclesia effect, you can just use him to special summon her out, and then she will special summon out the Fleur-de-Lis afterwards. So you definitely need at least 1 copy of these 3 cards in your deck if you're playing any Dogmatika list. You're playing the 1 Granganoil. Again, you're playing Blazing Cartesia, so you have to play it. And it also has like the synergy with that Guiding Quem combo that I mentioned earlier. So you're running 1 copy of this. And to wrap it up, the extra deck, you're running 1 Winda and 1 Apcalone. You know, the standard stuff that you have to play in order to get into her, and to search out the Schism at the like whenever you send it to the graveyard. So that's all for the extra deck. Again, pretty standard. I do really like this card that came out. I think it's going to be very underrated up until someone like, you know, tops a YCS or something or regional with it, and then everyone is going to start abusing it. And yeah, obviously the Lilith that replaced Quintent Magician is going to be pretty interesting. And yeah, I'll just quickly go over the side deck. It's going to kind of be geared towards your local meta or wherever you're playing, but I think this is kind of generic enough to include as well. So if you're just playing 1 Rainbow Magician, I know it's kind of like memed out recently, but it's kind of like Mystic Mine. There's some pretty interesting applications with this card because it's also a light spellcaster that has the same attack and defense. So technically, you can special summon it out with your Lulawalith, which is pretty funny. Obviously, you wouldn't really want to do that, but you can if you have Blazing Cartesia, like in rotation. Because with her, if you have both of these, you can just activate her quick effect to fuse both of these on the field into the graveyard in order to go into Granganoil. And then from there, you would just send like something like Schism or Apcalone in order to search the Schism. So whenever you search that and you set it, you can just activate the Rainbow Magician from your graveyard directly into your Pendulum Zone. And if you're not familiar like what this card even does, it essentially makes it so that your opponent can't activate any monster effects or attack unless they have a set card. So it's really good against Super Heavy Samurai because they don't have any spells and traps in their deck. So that's why I just have it in the side deck. I had it in the main deck while testing, but I think it's just better as a side card for now. So that's that. Moving on, you're running the Bysteals, so you're running 2 Magnamut and 1 Druid Worm. I would run more copies of this because I really hate Math Mech, and it really works well against Despia as well. But I just don't have enough room, so I'm just running this really small package. I've been really liking it, and it's been really putting in work against like those Math Mech players. Again, I wish I could run more copies of it, but there's just not enough room. So yeah, moving on, I'm running the 2 Magician's Left Hand. Really good to like negate those impermanences that literally every deck has. Also good against evenly matched, and you know, generically good against trap-based decks like Trap Tricks and Labyrinth as well. So I always like this card. It's like my personal tech. Moving on, you're running the 2 Secret Villages. Well, I guess no, you're running 1 Secret Village and 1 Terraforming. You just don't have enough room for multiple copies of it, and since you're running Pressure Planet, you can kind of choose which one that you want to go down if you're playing the Terraforming and the Secret Village. So I've just been liking this. It's a decent ratio. Before I was kind of like card breaking on multiple copies of this, so I decided just to play 1-1 for now. Moving on, you're running the 2 Dark Rulers, really good against Bright, and any of these synchro based decks that are just spamming on a bunch of level 12 or level 10 synchros like Baron and Chaos Ruler and all that. So I think this is kind of necessary for those type of matchups. Running 2 deep barrier. I would run 3, but again, you don't have enough room in the side deck, so I just played 2. And again, 3 is a little bit cloggy as well, especially when I'm signing this in. Most of the time I see like multiple copies of it, which isn't bad. Typically it means you're going to win. So I'm going to try to find more space for this card. I'm not sure. Maybe if Rainbow Magician isn't going to be as useful as I thought it would, I would just put in the 3rd copy. But yeah, for now I'm just running 2. And obviously you're running the 3 evenly match. That's pretty self-explanatory. Kind of have to run it. So yeah, that's kind of all that I have for this deck profile. Then this looks like it's going to be another long one, but you know, there's a lot to talk about in this one because it is a pretty interesting list, and yeah, a lot of change since my last list that I uploaded. Again, I've been testing it online and at locals, and I think it's in a very good state now. I feel very confident in how it's going to perform moving forward. Just let me know if you're curious about like how the deck performs. I can probably do like a combo video, but yeah, this video is getting a little bit too long, so again, I'm going to have to improve on that in the future. I'm not sure how I want to do it, but yeah, for now, I think the deck profile is kind of concluded. So again, stay tuned for the channel. I'm going to be releasing some more videos on this deck in the future. I'm also preparing for the YCS in Philadelphia later this month, so I'll probably post my results of this deck probably then. I'm probably not going to do another deck profile. I really hope I don't have to like refilm this again. But yeah, that's all I have, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.